Hey, I'm so glad you're here. In 2025, the top three golfers in the world were Scottie Scheffler, Rory McIlroy, and Tommy Fleetwood. Combined together, you had to feel sorry for them. They didn't make but $63 million. Now, the thing about them, the reason they made so much money is because they are really good at what they do when they play the game of golf. But there's some unsung heroes in their life that you probably don't hear about. As a matter of fact, you might hear a little bit about them, but if you saw them walking down the street, you wouldn't have any idea probably who they are. But the first is a guy by the name of Ted Scott. He is the caddy for Scottie Scheffler. The next guy is Harry Diamond. He's the caddy for Rory McIlroy. And the last one is a guy by the name of Ian Finnis, and he is the caddy for Tommy Fleetwood. Now, most networks don't say a whole lot about them unless they're winning, and they kind of show them kind of at the last holes. But you see, when you look at this, is that people say little about them. And man, they are the unsung heroes. And by the way, there are two big events that are going to happen next weekend. Number one, the Masters. Let's start that one all over again, all right? Somebody better. Holmes, you didn't say nothing. You just sat back there. That's when you know the boy's got Baptist in his blood. He ain't said a word back there, all right? So there's two great events that are going to happen next weekend. The Masters, thank you, all right? And the next one is we start a brand new series called Now What? So if you're thinking about, okay, what happens after Easter, I want to encourage you to come back. So don't make Easter or Christmas the only time you show up. Come next week and you're going to see the purposes of God and what he has for you. But just like the golf caddies, history rarely talks about the unsung heroes. And in our Easter series we've been talking about these unsung heroes from the Easter story. But there's a group that never gets mentioned even as unsung heroes. The group, the Roman guards. Now, you might be sitting there now going, well, why would you mention them? They're the guys that nailed Jesus to a cross. Why are they the unsung heroes? Well, what you have to see is that when you think about these people being the unsung heroes, then why would we even mention them? Because, look what they did. It's like someone who was bullying you all in your middle school career. So all 3 years of middle school, you've got this person who is bullying you, and you introduce them as your unsung hero because they have been building great character in your life. Hey, shout out to Buzz McAllister because he stuffed me in a locker for 3 years, and I just want to say he's my unsung hero. Hey, let's hear it for Buzz. Nobody's clapping for Buzz, okay? Or it might be the fact that it could be the lady who got you fired at work. And boy, the boss stands up and says, hey, our unsung hero, her name is Karen. And she is going to escort you out with all the security, and you're being escorted out, and you're saying, I promise you, Karen ain't the unsung hero. As a matter of fact, she's the one who's causing all the problems here. But you see, when we think about this, is that here's the twist of it. God uses the very people sent to shut the story down to prove that the story was true. The guards didn't stop the miracle of the resurrection. They stood and watched it unfold, but they still missed it because proximity to a miracle doesn't guarantee participation in it. Now, I want to give you two questions that the guards force us to answer tonight. So hopefully you're taking some notes. Here's the first question. Do you want a miracle? Now, this sounds like an easy question because, it's Easter, it's the resurrection. But you see, Easter proves it's not that simple because when God moves, not everyone celebrates. Some people attempt to stop it. The guards, they were paid to prevent a miracle, and they were trained to stop threats. The religious leaders, they were nervous about Jesus even after he died because they had remembered that Jesus had said he had risen from the dead. And I think it's kind of ironic that the religious leaders, they lived in some fear because they remembered Jesus saying that he was going to rise from the dead, and yet the disciples had forgotten that Jesus would rise, but his enemies had not. Pilate, he assigns guards to the tomb. Now, these are not security guards at the mall riding Segways, okay? These are elite soldiers, and their job was simple. Nobody in, nobody out. Make sure that the body stays in the grave. Make sure that the Roman seal that would be written all across the stone, make sure that nobody messes with it. Now, if a Roman guard failed at his assignment, he didn't get written up. He was executed on the spot by the sword. So here's a question that you ought to ask. Okay, who would you rather have guarding the tomb? The Roman soldier or Paul Blart? Paul, I guess, but Paul, all right? So I think we know this, but then what happens is that the Roman guards show up. Then the miracle happens. There's an earthquake. An angel shows up in an appearance like lightning, and the guards were so afraid that they shook and became like dead men. Matter of fact, if you would go to the text, the original language, the Greek, it says that they shook violently, that they couldn't help themselves because they fell like dead men. Now, these guys have seen war and death, and they faced enemies with a sword, but now they're terrified of an angel. I mean, I could understand it if Chuck Norris has risen from the dead and he shows up. I can understand a group of guards being afraid of that dude. But this angel, I mean, they are so afraid of him. And they show up expecting to guard a grave. And instead, they get an earthquake. They get Mr. Angel shows up. The stone is rolled away and you have an empty tomb. Now at this point, can you imagine how the job description changes for the soldiers? See, the miracle wasn't for Jesus. Jesus didn't need the stone rolled away. Jesus created the stone. Jesus could have walked right through the stone. He didn't even need the miracle. The miracle that the stone was rolled away was for the eyewitnesses. The first eyewitnesses of the resurrection were not believers in Jesus, but he made sure they saw it. It was for the guards themselves. You see, it's amazing that there was a group they were assigned to guard the dead, and they became like dead men. And there was one who was dead. He walks out alive. That's because the miracles happen. And the guards being the first eyewitnesses is a powerful evidence. They weren't even followers of Jesus, and yet they were there to stop him, and they saw the miracle. And the Roman seal, understand, that Roman seal that was printed with a chisel probably all the way across the stone, that the law was that if anybody messes with the Roman seal, they are executed on the spot. And so the Roman seal being broken doesn't happen unless something greater than Rome shows up. But the strongest evidence of the resurrection are the women. It's a group of people that are abused, belittled. They don't have a voice. They're taken advantage of. And God says, watch this. I'll make sure that the first people that talk about the resurrection, the first proclaimers of the resurrection, the first evangelists are a group of women. Now, let me tell you what God really said, okay? He said, if I want the resurrection story told right and remembered clearly and repeated more than once with every detail, I'm going to pick some women to do that. Now, men, look at me, men. I'm going to help you here, okay? Whatever you're thinking, stop right now, okay? Because even when you're thinking it, she's going to know you're thinking it, amen? So don't do that. See, I think most of all, maybe not all of us in here, but I think most of us would say, well, I guess I believe in the miracle of Easter, the resurrection. I mean, I think I believe in Easter Sunday. But here's the question. Don't miss this. Does the miracle affect you? so many say, if I saw the miracle, I would change my life. Well, there is a tomb in Jerusalem that nobody's in. The tomb is empty. And so we need to ask ourselves, okay, what does really the empty tomb, what does it really mean? And does it really affect me? Because usually, the closest to the miracle miss it, just like the Romans guard. And you are sitting here knowing the resurrection is true. But again, has the miracle changed you? And the real question is not, do you want a miracle? The real question is, what will you do when God disrupts your assumptions? See, God shattered all of it. And the greatest obstacle to your miracle isn't your problem. It's your assumption of how God is allowed to solve it. And the reason that we struggle with the miracle of the resurrection is because no matter where you are on your spiritual journey, no matter if you say, I don't even believe that God exists, I don't believe that Jesus exists, and you're welcome to believe that. No matter, I think everybody here is smart enough to know that on your best day, you can't raise somebody from the dead. See, that's our problem that we have to look at and deal with it. And so the miracle demands a response, and when it doesn't, it leads us to our second question. So again, if you're taking notes, second question, do you want to control the narrative? You see, when they realized and they got to the tomb and realized, okay, something is going on that we didn't even plan on, what takes place is that in their mind, see, they had already thought the situation was controlled and it was predicted and it was finished. But then the guards, they see the tomb, they see the empty tomb, they run back into the city, and they tell the religious leaders everything that happened. You're not gonna believe this, but we've had an earthquake. Not only that, but there's an angel showed up. The stone was rolled away, and get this, there is no body in the grave. The religious leaders gather, and they don't say, well, maybe Jesus rose from the dead. They ask, how do we control the narrative? You see, they were making sure they were gonna get their story straight. They didn't even consider that maybe God was doing something that they couldn't control. You see, they're like many of us, is that we would rather be right than we would allow God to change us. And then they gave the soldiers a large sum of money and told them to say that the disciples stole the body. And even today, that is an argument that you will hear from even theologians that will say, well, the disciples stole the body. Can I just tell you that's preposterous. It makes no sense whatsoever, because can I tell you, the only people that were brave enough to get to the grave was a group of women. The people that stayed behind, they were the disciples. They had been hanging out with Jesus. If you study history, you'll know this, is that they had been hanging out with Jesus. They thought they were next and they were going to be crucified like Jesus. They're hiding in fear because they didn't want to lose their life. How in the name of sense could you ever say, well, the disciples stole his body? The disciples are hiding in fear. They would never, ever steal the body. And so when you think about that, if there is a body, there is no resurrection story. If the resurrection was not the truth, they would have produced a body. Think about this. And this is what it said. This is what they said if you'll read the other Gospels. Tell everyone that the disciples stole the body while you were sleeping. Does anybody find the humor in that but me? Hold on. Tell them the disciples stole the body while you were sleeping. How would you know that the disciples stole the body if you were sleeping? That's like you telling your boss, I know who stole the donuts in the break room, but I know that, and I can know this, but I was sleeping the whole time. Well, you don't know who stole the donuts. You just think you do. You have no idea you were sleeping. I mean, that's the way it is. I mean, tell them that, hey, they didn't know. And so when you look at this, the reason that people reject the truth is not because there's no evidence. They reject the truth because you have to do something with the miracle. We avoid the miracle by attempting to control the narrative because logic makes no sense. Can I tell you how we control the narrative? We say things like, Jesus, he was a good teacher. He was a good man. He was a prophet. He even did some miracles. Every major religion believes that. But if Jesus is more than that because he rose from the dead, if he's a Messiah, God in the flesh, the great I am, then he's not just someone to admire, but he's someone I have to surrender to. It's why people control the narrative. It's simply because we don't want to submit to Jesus. We don't want to submit to Jesus. And it's like the man who broke into the house. He broke into the house and he entered, and as soon as he got in the house, he heard this little voice, and it said, Jesus is watching you. Jesus is watching you. And he's thinking, who is saying this? And all of a sudden, it says it again. Jesus is watching you. Jesus is watching you. And finally, he turns on the light. And when he turns on the light, he sees the parrot in the cage. And he's thinking, oh, that's who's saying it. And then the burglar goes over to the parrot. And he asks the parrot, did you say that? And the parrot says, yes. Yes. And he says, looks at the parrot and says, what is your name? He says, Moses. Moses. And he says, who in the world would name a parrot? Who would name a parrot Moses? And the burglar asked, why would the people name you Moses? And the parrot replied, the same people who named the Rottweiler Jesus. That's who. You see, the truth changes the situation pretty quickly. The religious and the guards, they knew the tomb was empty. But they're like many of us. We choose to control the narrative and change the story to what we prefer. I'm not going to submit to Jesus because I know better. I'm not going to surrender to Jesus because I love my sin and it makes me feel good in the moment. I'm still amazed at people, especially church people, that would look at me at sometimes and go, well, I'll tell you what, I'm just not going to live in sin. Oh, that's a good thing. Why do you not live in sin? Oh, I'm going to tell you what, they're just not fun. Bro, you don't know the right sins to commit then. Let me tell you, I know the right sins to commit. They are fun. They're pleasurable for a season. But there's so many times that we just say, no, I'm not going to submit to Jesus. I'm going to do whatever I want to. Because my sins make me feel good in the moment. I'm not going to allow Jesus to run my life because I would rather get man's approval versus God's approval. There's some of you here tonight and you're saying, you know what, I think I might submit to Jesus, but you know what, I'm so concerned about what the men at my business would think about me. I would rather have their approval than I would God's approval. Some of you ladies would say, I would rather have the ladies' approval than I would than God's approval. So I'm just going to please the women. And some of you men are even saying, hey, there's women at my work. I'd rather please them than I would have the approval of God on my life. Some of you students in here, you're saying, I would rather have students' approval. I'd rather have my friends' approval than I would the approval of God. That's what we are thinking all the time. Why in the world are we always trying to be like somebody else? And this Jesus that died for you and rose again, he's got more for you than you could ever imagine. And yet, we would rather have something else than what Jesus has for us. I'm not going to let Jesus be the boss of my life because I want to be in control. There's no way I'm going to surrender to Jesus, and there's no way that I could ever surrender to Jesus because, and this is where some of you are living, there's no way that he could love me because of everything I've done in the past. Whether you surrender to Jesus or not, the truth about Easter is the resurrection happened. The guards didn't stop it. The Roman seal didn't stop it. The stone didn't stop it, and death didn't stop it. And I am just amazed so many times that when I'm sharing Christ with somebody and they will look at me and they will say, you know what? I just don't believe all that stuff. You don't believe what stuff? all that stuff about God. I don't believe the stuff about Jesus. I said, well, okay, let's do this. Let's just take the Bible, let's close it, let's put it on the shelf that it doesn't exist. So the Bible doesn't exist. So we're not going to argue from the case of the Bible. Is that good? Yeah. I said, then what do you do with the historical fact of the resurrection? It is the greatest, most supernatural event that's ever taken place, and there's more evidence about the resurrection. You could not disprove it if you wanted to. You got to do something with it. But see, we would rather not do something with it. We would just rather ignore it to control the narrative. So let me ask you, are you attempting to control the narrative tonight? Because Jesus lives, your sins can be forgiven. Your past doesn't define you. Your failures don't have the final word. Your worst day doesn't get the last chapter. So the question is, do you want a miracle day, or would you rather walk out and brag to yourself that you controlled the narrative? And the same power that raised Jesus from the dead is available to you this night. It's real easy for people to say, well, I tell you what, I just, especially men, I know that I probably need Jesus, but you know what? I'm not going to do that, because can I just tell you something? You just need to be a man. You need to pull your boots up by the straps. That whole thing about Jesus, that whole stuff about God, that religious stuff, that's just a crutch. It's not a crutch. It's a stretcher. And if you don't put your body in the stretcher that Jesus is carrying for you, you're going to end up going to a place called hell for all eternity. And at that point, you got more problems than you could ever contend with. And yet Jesus offers everything to you. He died for you. He rose from the dead. And I just want you to say that Satan will do all he can to convince you that you're not worth it. You are worth it, because Jesus has proven that. But you can't have Jesus unless you release control of your life. You know, it's like this, is that Jesus stands at the door of your heart, and he just knocks. He just keeps knocking. And while he's knocking, he's waiting for you to open the door, to let him in. But here's the thing about when Jesus is knocking. As he's knocking, the only handle is on the inside, and you've got to open it. And right now you're saying, well, you know what? Jesus is knocking. I'll tell you what, eventually I'm going to say yes to Jesus, and he keeps knocking. Maybe it gets louder. It just gets louder and louder. And then all of a sudden you think, you know what? I'm not going to do it. And you say no to Jesus, and he quits knocking. And the moment he quits knocking, no matter how bad you ever want it, you'll never be able to receive Jesus, because the only way you ever allow Jesus to come in is you open the door. But when he stops knocking, there's no more. And so some of you need to make that decision tonight. You need to receive Christ for the very first time tonight. And the way we do it here, it's not a hard thing. It's the attitude of your heart saying, yes, I receive Jesus into my life. So if I'm going to give you that opportunity, I'm going to give you that opportunity, but I'm going to give you the opportunity to go through water baptism. I know right now you're going, well, what? No, dude, no. I didn't bring anything. We got everything you need. Why would I go through water baptism? Because Jesus told you to. Go therefore and make disciples, baptizing them in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. But see, you have to decide that. So I'm going to ask you to do me a favor. I'm going to ask everybody just to bow your head and close your eyes, would you?